What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the second installment for What If Naruto Ate the Horo Horo no Mi. I hope you guys enjoyed the first part, and if you did and you forgot to hit that like button, make sure to go back and slap it up, seeing as it helps the video do so much better in the algorithm. That said, if you're going to enjoy today's video, make sure to comment down below what your favorite part was, and with all that out of the way, enjoy.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
What parlor trick are you talking about, Sasuke? These aren't parlor tricks. You could call it a KK Genkai. Something similar to your Sharingan, except 100 times better. I'm stronger than you are, Sasuke. Not to mention, you haven't even unlocked your clan's dojutsu yet. So, I'd be a little hasty when talking about before suddenly Naruto just throws a kunai towards some bushes, and suddenly we just see the scared white rabbit just like pretty much terrified for its life, right? Could you imagine you're just a little baby rabbit, right? You're chilling, you know what I mean? You get substituted by some random ninja, you were just having a good time, and suddenly a giant kunai just comes flying at you and almost tears you in half. This bunny is terrified. And Sakura looks at Naruto and she's like, "What'd you do that for, Naruto?" Naruto just looks at her and says, "Be quiet." And from here, we see the mist thickening itself, when suddenly a long blade comes flying in from out of nowhere, and you just hear Kakashi yell, "Duck!" as everybody does so, and Zabuza Momoichi ends up essentially arriving to the scene. This is the moment where Zabuza is essentially on top of his sword, and he looks down to Team 7, saying, "Team 7. Or no, not Team 7, but Kakashi Hatake. I've heard rumors about you. I never thought I'd have the honor of facing you myself." Kakashi would look back at him being like, "Zabuza, one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. This could be dangerous, guys. Take a step back, I'll handle it from here." But Naruto, with a smug look on his face, simply says 3, 2, 1. As Zabuza falls from his sword and then begins to essentially call himself worthless, fall into a deep state of depression as Kakashi looks to Naruto and with a wide eye, would just look to Zabuza, who's on the ground currently, before he then just decides, maybe we leave him alone? Naruto looks to Kakashi before saying, "We can't exactly let a missing nin who is out to kill us alive, can we now?" Before Kakashi goes on to grab a blade, and then not a blade, but his kunai, and then essentially bring it down onto Zabuza, which Zabuza kind of just looked up to Kakashi and tried to dodge it, but he wasn't able to because of the fact that in his current state, he wasn't able to put up a bit of a fight. That said, Senbon came flying into Kakashi, which he was barely able to dodge via not killing Zabuza, and Haku jumps in and grabs Zabuza before the fight could even be engaged, which leads to Zabuza and Haku's introduction happening a lot sooner than in canon, and they end up making their way to run off somewhere without Zabuza or Kakashi being heavily injured or drained. They end up making their way towards Tazuna's household, and it's at this moment that we have the situation with Tazuna introducing the group to Tsunami as well as Inari. Inari would end up introducing himself to the team in a very disrespectful, horrible way. How do I put this? Inari essentially ends up telling everybody, "Hey, you guys, why are you guys here? You're just gonna die anyways. What is the point?" And Naruto looks at Inari, he's like, "Shut up, brat, you don't know what you're talking about." Inari gets angry, he's like, "You're just gonna die, there's no place for heroes like you," yada yada yada, saying that they have no idea how hard life can be. And Naruto, upon hearing these words, would look to Inari, almost say what he had in his mind of just wanting to tell him all the things that Naruto could have really said to this kid, but he stayed silent. He simply walked out of the room and excused himself. From here, he sat down in a chair outside and went into a spiritual form, in which Naruto began flying through the airs and just thinking to himself, "How dare this kid tell me what hard life is? I live one of the hardest lives you could possibly have. People hated me for what? For being a Jinchuriki? I wasn't responsible for that. It's not my fault." and I still had to deal with all of those things. Everything that came with having some beast inside of you. The only good thing about my life has been these powers. The powers of the devil fruit I ate. But whatever. He's just a kid. Naruto proceeds to essentially go back inside, not say a word to Inari, and eventually the very next day they would end up kind of just getting ready to build the bridge. Naruto would end up being told by Kakashi to stay behind and help Tsunami with the cooking. Naruto isn't against it, he's like, sure thing. And from here the group goes out to the bridge. What ends up happening this particular day is Naruto, he gets a bad feeling. Rightfully so. And what Naruto essentially ends up doing is pretty much telling Tsunami that he'll be right back to stay safe. He ends up body flickering out of that area, and he ends up basically making his way towards the bridge, where he ends up encountering Zabuza, Aku, as well as Team 7 midst battle. They're all in the middle of some, violent clashing. They're all pretty much clashing kunais, doing their thing, right? And the group is all like looking at each other, trying to get the upper edge on one another. When eventually Naruto comes flying in, and he would go on to create a bunch of clones, at least 40. With these 40 clones activated, what Naruto would go on to do is essentially tell them all to create the exploding ghosts. They would do so, and these ghosts, like in the last part, would swarm up to create a gigantic, like 2 big fists that come flying in at Haku, who currently had Sasuke trapped in the crystal ice mirror, and essentially went on to explode on the mirrors, causing a huge amount of backlash to hit Sasuke, but this time he doesn't die. Sasuke at this moment did actually unlock the Sharingan just because we need him at least a little strong, and I don't want to take that away from him this time around. Sakura is still by the bridge builder being useless per usual, and Zabuza ends up getting hit with a brunt force of this explosion, sending him back, weakening him heavily. Following this, Naruto was able to jump into the fight alongside Zabuza, who was not Zabuza, but Sasuke, who was heavily injured, and help clean up the pieces when it comes to Haku and his Ice Crystal Mirror Jutsu, as well as him as a whole. He's able to quickly get the upper hand on Haku, and with one of his giant ghosts, he would physically attack Haku in ways that Haku was simply not able to dodge. It was way too difficult for Haku, and eventually he ended up being overwhelmed by the explosions and these strange, wacky abilities Naruto displays, wondering to himself in his final thoughts, what Kekkei Genkai is that? But he never got the answer. The last thing he saw was Zabuza's life about to be ended, and he jumped in the way before Zabuza could be pierced by the Chidori. Suddenly, Gato and his men would arrive around the bridge, and this is when the situation that happened in canon would end up going down a lot sooner than in the original. Then Gato arrives with his men. Zabuza shows why he's the demon of the mist, and then goes on to eradicate Gato's men as well as Gato himself, falling into the river and being let to lay rest next to Haku for all of eternity. Following this, Team 7 ends up packing their bags, being thanked by everybody from the Land of the Waves, and then having the bridge being named the Great Naruto Bridge, just like it would be in canon. They end up arriving back to the village, and in Konoha, they end up pretty much giving a brief description of what happened in the mission to Hiruzen, who ends up telling them that they actually did a great job and informing Kakashi subtly about informing his team of the existence of the Chunin exams. Once they make their way out of there, Naruto would simply go on to walk past some kid with a blue scarf and a bratty looking face, Konohamaru, someone who he doesn't have a good relationship with in canon and isn't the rival per se, because Naruto, while still interested in the position of Kage for the recognition, doesn't really care about Konohamaru or his failed attempts to beat Hiruzen in a one-on-one battle to dethrone him. This time around, Konohamaru never bumps into Team Suna, aka the Sand Siblings, so Team 7 doesn't end up bumping into them either. And eventually Kakashi would just inform the squad of the existence of the Chunin exams, leading to the Sasuke versus Rock Lee fight that ends up going down just like it does in canon. Naruto would simply sit in the sidelines, and once Lee actually would ask him to fight, Naruto would actually see the fact that there's a bunch of people around and decline it, saying that it's too early for him to reveal his cards, looking to Sasuke before saying that he should have done something similar to what he's doing now, considering now everybody's gonna know that Sasuke has a Sharingan and a pretty brief sample piece of Sasuke's true taijutsu prowess. So Sasuke just kind of put a big target on his back. That said though, he ends up walking towards the examination room, and that it goes on just like in canon. Everybody uses their wits, their distractions, and begins to cheat to pass this test, eventually leading to everybody who ended up going in canon passing, and like let's say 15 less people just because Naruto doesn't give his amazing speech, so 5 less teams to deal with. Which would have ultimately been killed in the Forest of Death, mind you, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, for them it's a good thing because now they get to live. But for anybody else who needed scrolls, their battles are going to have to be changed in terms of who they're going to have to take the scrolls from. That said, what ends up happening following this is they end up making their way towards the Forest of Death, where about 30 minutes into it, they end up encountering a very powerful, potent, and capable shinobi by the name of Orochimaru, but they're not sure of it because, I mean, Orochimaru's using what jutsu is he using? He's using the transformation jutsu or something crazy like that because his face like literally melts to reveal who he truly is. I digress though. Naruto this time around doesn't end up going off to take a leak at the worst possible moment, instead deciding to go early on, so he's still with Team 7 when Orochimaru ends up ambushing them, meaning that the gigantic snake never ends up rushing at Naruto, and instead what ends up happening is Naruto is able to stick by the team when Orochimaru arrives. Naruto, feeling the huge amount of bloodlust coming off of Orochimaru, would genuinely be terrified to his core. I mean, Naruto has faced powerful opponents like Zabuza, but the bloodlust that this ninja just lets loose, it's on a whole nother level. Orochimaru, or this, shinobi from the land hidden in the grass, is just a different monster. Naruto, acknowledging this, would end up deciding to essentially look for cover. Through a moment of desperation, Naruto was able to leap away, leaving Sasuke to essentially look at Orochimaru, stab himself, and run off with Sakura before he could get absolutely annihilated by a jutsu that Orochimaru would shoot at their direction. Following this though, Naruto in his spiritual form would end up flying towards Orochimaru and telling him that he is going to crush him, growing to a gigantic size before then looking towards Orochimaru, who wonders how he learned the Akamichi's technique without being part of their clan. Naruto says it's none of his business as he comes down with a hit and like swipes towards the air so it doesn't actually end up hitting anything, but Orochimaru was able to essentially, how do I put this, dodge out of the way and notice, hey, that didn't hit me. Naruto looks towards Orochimaru and then begins to tell him that him taking him out is an impossibility in and of itself, before Orochimaru decides that he's done playing games. He would shoot a powerful jutsu at Naruto's direction, which doesn't affect him at all, leading to Orochimaru realizing, hey, this is either genjutsu or he's not really there. So what Orochimaru essentially ends up doing is proceeding to rush towards the direction that he saw Naruto hiding in, and Naruto's ghost spiritual form would fly towards his real body right before Orochimaru could catch him, and jumps out of the way of one of Orochimaru's powerful attacks. Following this, Naruto goes on to say, "You're no fun," and from here shoots a bunch of ghosts towards the direction of Orochimaru, which explode upon first contact, revealing the true Orochimaru and legendary Sannin that stands before them. Once they all get a quick glimpse of this, Sasuke is able to snap back into reality, and through watching Naruto just show off in front of him, is able to think to himself, I can't let him show me up. He ends up jumping in the battle, and Naruto and Sasuke end up getting into a brief taijutsu battle with Orochimaru. That ends up doing pretty good for them as a whole, but nothing much else, honestly. That said though, what ends up going on following these events is Naruto would actually go on to essentially use his depression ghost to make Orochimaru stuck. Like, he gets Orochimaru to not be able to chase them because his will to follow them gets diminished. And so Team 7 is able to gradually escape Orochimaru's grasp long enough for Anko to arrive on the scene and Orochimaru to retreat. This time, Sasuke doesn't get the curse mark, which is actually going to be playing a huge part in what happens later. That said though, following into what happens next, they end up informing Hiruzen of the existence of a very powerful shinobi with white skin and purple makeup on his eyes, and Hiruzen is immediately put on guard to the fact that Orochimaru is currently present in the village. He ends up asking Naruto how they survived, and Naruto explains to Hiruzen that he used one of his many jutsus in his bags to pretty much end up outsmarting and outplaying the legendary Sannin himself. Hiruzen is actually pretty proud of Naruto, and he would tell him that he did a great job, going on to explain to them that they better get ready for the preliminaries, which are going to be happening in about 3 hours. Following this, the team would end up going on to, not 3 hours, sorry, but 3 days. They would go on to get rest, and since Sasuke doesn't have the curse mark, his match would end up going simpler than it did in canon. Naruto's battle against Kiba, I'm gonna enjoy saying this, Kiba just has one of those sad ghosts go through him, and Kiba just ends up pretty much quitting the battle. He ends up giving up in front of everybody, saying that he's worthless, that he's weak, and that he only made fun of Naruto because he was jealous. Saying stuff like that, and pretty much downplaying himself any chance he could possibly get. Naruto was loving every single second of this, and Kiba, once he found out what he had done through the means of Naruto's strange wacky jutsu, ended up getting royally pissed at Naruto, saying that he'll get him for this, Naruto Uzumaki! You know, how would you feel if something like this happened to you? I'm pretty sure you guys would probably be a little mad. That said though, what should happen next? Oh yeah, preliminaries. The rest of the battles essentially go down just like they do in canon, and eventually we find ourselves in the 1 month training period, right? It's 1 month? Yeah, it's 1 month. It's a 1 month training period in which everybody ends up trying to work on their areas that, you know, they didn't really have too much finesse in, or, you know, things such as that nature. Everybody ends up doing their own thing, and eventually Naruto ends up bumping into the path of the legendary Sannin Jiraiya himself. During this time, Naruto ends up working on a new technique alongside Jiraiya that he could use with his ghosts, which is essentially ghostly prison, where he makes a manifestation of a bunch of ghosts that are able to trap somebody much like Gaara's sand coffin and crush them, before then exploding and destroying them. Naruto, upon hearing of these new moves and tactics, would be very, very happy on this, and Jiraiya, finding out about Naruto's abilities to project himself outside of his body spiritually, will tell Naruto that that's a great gift to have. It's super powerful and versatile in and of itself. Naruto says that while he has a decent mastery of the fruits, he feels as if there's more. He feels as if there is more to be discovered with this fruit, and that this isn't the uppermost limit to it. He has a couple base abilities that could possibly make him a huge threat in battle, but he wants more. And Jiraiya would help him learn more things via the introduction of the summoning jutsu. Now, once Naruto learns that he has the ability to summon toads, he would simply state that, I mean, that sounds cool, but toads? Really? Aren't they kind of lame? Jiraiya would end up summoning a giant toad and telling Naruto, does this look lame to you, boy? Naruto looks at him and says, yeah, I don't like toads, dude. And Jiraiya just face palms. He's like, bro, your whole dad was a toad sage as well, bro. What are you doing? You gotta follow the family lineage. Naruto would eventually end up just being like, whatever. And he ends up signing the scroll. For the month, he ends up kind of learning how to control Gamabunta, and what he ends up doing following this is a bit of practice on the control of Kurama's chakra. He ends up getting a brief understanding of how to tap into it without losing himself to the Nine-Tails' wrath or rage, and so this is going to be helping him with his upcoming battle against Neji from the Hyuga clan, which is actually going to change a lot when it comes to what happens in the original. I mean, keep in mind, Neji is a close range fighter, doesn't really have much like versatility when it comes to long range. So when it comes to Neji, he's actually going to be one-shotted by Naruto via his depression ghost that just goes flying through Neji and essentially takes Neji's willpower to fight against Naruto away from him. It happened so fast that Neji was just like, oh, so I'm depressed now? And Naruto just basically ended up making Neji give up so that everybody could watch, as Naruto had done it a second time. With everybody watching this, they would think to themselves that Naruto's jutsu is actually fairly overpowered and could be used in the wrong way someday, not some way, but someday. Eventually, though, everybody just comes to the same consensus of whatever, it's powerful, he's our shinobi, and eventually the Sasuke versus Gaara fight would happen, which leads to Gaara's eventual rampage and rushing out of the village, which leads to the eventual Konoha Crush arc, which essentially goes just like it what you guys would expect would happen in canon. The major change being that Naruto was able to use his ghost ability to just shoot a little ghost through Gaara's transformation state and make Gaara just kind of rethink everything that's happening within himself right now. Not only does Gaara doubt himself, but Shukaku internally within Gaara begins to essentially grow soft. Naruto, seeing this, would find it extremely funny and would actually be able to go towards Gaara and essentially beat some sense into him, like hit him on the head, knocking Gaara out, which once Shukaku snaps out of that crazy state, he's able to grow into his gigantic Big Daddy Chungus mode, which Naruto ends up summoning Gamabunta for, and eventually waking Gaara up, which leads to the eventual defeat of Gaara. The One-Tailed Jinchuriki, Tamara and Kankuro take him away, and Naruto still talk no jutsu's Gaara, just like many of you guys would probably expect. At this point, Sasuke is feeling insecure because this man is just doing things left and right, and Sasuke is just beginning to be left in the dirt. He had everything in the academy, but all of a sudden, Naruto's progressing so fast that Sasuke can't keep up. He can't even remember the last time he and Naruto faced each other, and Sasuke was able to heavily pull ahead of Naruto. This is becoming embarrassing, and Sasuke has to do something about it.